Life is not just positive vibes. There are things in the physical that happen to people, and we should address that. And also, I was feeling that this had to release. I had to let go of these things and share it to, as many people it would resonate with, even if that is one person. Hi, I'm Lovely, and this is The Lovely Life. In case you're tuning in for the first time, I am a psychic medium and I channel messages from loved ones who have crossed over. And not just that, I also talk to angels, spirit guides, alien friends, and more beings from the light. This channel of mine is everything about spirituality. We talk a lot of law of attraction, channeling, and all kinds of fun things from the other side. So I hope if you're watching this right now, you must have seen my video that is a part one of this video. And if you have not seen, go to the I button and you can watch it. Before you start watching this, I must tell you this video could be triggering for you. That's my disclaimer because I will be mentioning a lot of triggering stuff, which are facts, which are my personal experiences, which I feel has to come out. And I've been pushing this away for so long because I make content on spirituality, law of attraction, vision boards, channeling, and everything. But I also believe that life is not just positive vibes. There are things in the physical that happen to people, and we should address that. And also, I was feeling that this had to release. I had to let go of these things and share it to, as many people it would resonate with, even if that is one person. And that was super important for me for my own spiritual growth. So I could move past this and I could heal my trauma and do more healing for other people. So in my last video, I uh, explained how the whole thing happened around my childbirth, my second childbirth. And if you have seen the whole video, you know that I had mentioned that then eventually I agreed for a cesarean, agreed for a C section delivery. I thought, okay, that would be the end of the whole thing. And, I will be out of pain. Maybe it was meant to be. And then soon I will be holding my baby in my arms. But there was so much more that I had to endure. Uh, Up until this point, I had bared so much pain that I almost passed out. I actually passed out. I don't know whether what I was experiencing was near death experience or something else because I was almost unconscious. Suddenly, as they were shifting me to the operation theater, they wanted me to sit down so that they could, give me the injection that is done on the backbone. That is how they numb your lower body, which is again super traumatic. But anyway, I've experienced that during my first childbirth. So I had this sense of what was happening around me, but maybe my body gave up. My eyes were open. I could see nurses, hovering around me, trying to hold me, but my body just gave up. How they say there is this maybe it was my mind. There is this limit to, there's this certain extent to what your body can bear pain. So either you pass out, either you die, or you die, or, something of that sort. I still do not know what exactly happened. And I remember they trying, so it was around COVID. And until then, they had nothing to do. But as I was, and they were getting me ready for the operation, they started putting, quickly they started putting the mask on my face. Up until then, none of them were wearing it. So I remember, just grabbing my mask off and throwing it. That's the only memory I have. And then I remember they injecting me with the, I remember the anesthetic coming. It was a man. And I remember lying down and the operation began. With that began the rant. The lady, the OBGYN, who had already done so much to make me fearful, to make me scarred for life, started ranting about how bad and pathetic and arrogant and adamant I was. Imagine, I just remember saying, I can feel my legs, I can feel my legs. But then she said, now can you? So maybe eventually the anesthesia kicked in and I felt the numbness, but I could still. I remember there was the anesthetist as I was lying down on the operation table. The anesthetist, the man was sitting on my left, and I still remember there was a clock on it. So I kept looking at the clock and I was listening to all that rant. Imagine they've cut my belly, and they're doing this, and they are constantly saying bad things about me and my family. They were like, all sorts of things. What would I do there? After all that trauma, where will I run? Or do I have an option of not listening or even saying a word? And so I lied down there helplessly. And she kept on saying a few things. I could pick up a few things. She kept on saying, this is taking so long. And it's all, she mentioned something about all the arteries and veins being stuck together because it's a second C-section and all those things. So they were discussing, she was saying things to the um, anesthetist. She was almost ranting about me, how difficult they make this whole thing. They don't understand. They don't know nothing about medicine, and they don't know nothing about all these things. And then they question us and all sorts of things. And I was lying there helplessly. But there was this one awareness. I remember the last time I had the surgery, because I told you I gave birth through C-section, for the first time. So I know it doesn't take that long. It is all pretty quick and the baby is out. But this took longer than usual. Even in that state, I had that awareness. I was looking at the clock, but I remember it was around 9 o'clock, but I don't remember exactly how long it took. But it felt like more than half an hour, which is weird. Even after that, I've told so many people, and I have friends who are in the medical field. They tell me, no, that's weird. It doesn't take that long. Anyway, then they said something about my baby, which I could hear. I could hear with my outer ears, but I couldn't react. Suddenly I felt my left arm becoming numb. There was this sensation, and I could speak, and I told the anesthetist, sir, something is happening, something like that. Doctor, something is happening. I don't know what I uttered. So he came to me and he kept on calling me, are you here with me, and all those things. He was the only person who was a little bit okay in that whole room, who talked softly to me. Maybe because he was not, I don't know, whatever it was, whoever it was. I will never forget his face. So he did something, then that numbness went away. Then then again it took a while, and then I realized that the baby, they took the baby, and the nurses, there was something happening. The baby was stuck or something, so they pushed, and the doctor told the anesthetist to help. Can you push? Can you help us? So he also pushed, and I could feel them all, that pressure. It was not pain, it was something else. They were all pushing on my belly, trying to take that baby out. And I had no clue on what was happening. They don't tell you anything, you're never informed or anything. They don't feel a need to do that. Anyway, then I see them. I didn't hear my baby cry, and then I see them run out with the baby. And again, she started ranting about how the baby could die because of me, and things like that, how I delayed everything. I was not even given a couple of hours to, for my labor to extend, or, anyway, that happened. And then the OBGYN went outside, the nurse were talking something. And I vividly remember they mentioning something about a third woman. They were just talking, chatting, as if I'm not listening anything. They were chatting about how difficult their word is. And they said, "Oh my God, they've called another lady." And they just said in Hindi, "Unka bhi cesarean hai." So it is, I don't know, it's planned, like, they were planning something like by 12 o'clock in the midnight, there will be three cesareans. So I don't know what it was, or they were like already planning. Me and the other woman, if you've seen my old video, I had mentioned there was another woman in my labor room. Um, After me, she was the one who was supposed to be operated. So that happened, and then they put everything together. They wrapped everything together, and I still remember the sound of the stapler. I don't know what it is called in the medical term, but I remember them using that. It's a huge stapler. That's what they use to staple skin, because it was a second C-section for me. Okay, then they covered everything and then they brought me out. So they and me, we were waiting. So I was not immediately shifted to the ward or somewhere. So it was right outside the labor room. And up until then, I don't even know, they never informed me where my baby was, or was it healthy? Was it a boy or a girl or anything? Nothing. I don't remember if I asked somebody also. Then, as they brought me out, it was right outside. It was not exactly the ward, but it was right outside the labor room. And I saw this beautiful little baby moving on the weighing scale. And that's when I realized. So I looked at it. I didn't have the courage to ask anybody. I looked, I will never forget that sight. Thankfully, it was healthy looking, not very plump, but she was looking healthy. And that's when I asked the nurse, "Is she a girl? Is she okay?" She said, "Yeah, we had to give." So she told me maybe she was not breathing, nothing actually registered. And then they kept on, chatting, and they didn't know whether to take me. There was this indecisiveness, so much of communication gap. They didn't know whether to take me outside or they should be waiting. And weirdly, the thing that I remember very well is that the baby, my little girl, had no clothes on, and this was onset of winter. She was just lying down there on the weighing scale without any clothes. Maybe they don't put clothes so that it shows the real weight, but she was there for some time and I was watching. And then I asked them, "Could you just, bring her to me?" And then they maybe wrapped it into something and then they brought her to me. And I forgot all the pain and the agony I had just gone through. I vividly remember trying to grab those little fingers. She had grown nails, the fingers looked pink. And I almost forgave everybody who caused me all that pain. But but little did I know that there was more to come. So then I was shifted to the ward, and mm, my mother was informed by my husband. I don't remember the first time meeting my husband, also. I had no memory of it. I still don't remember what exactly happened after that. I remember going to the room. It was a small room that my husband had booked, and then the nurse came in. So she was feeding. Then she explained that you have to start feeding. Until then, I don't remember them giving the baby to me, because obviously it was a C-section, so I could not sit upright. So I know that the first milk, or even 1 or 2 hours post the birth, they don't let you breastfeed the baby because you can't, and they don't even encourage it. And that's insane. Anyway, then that night went, and I think my mom was informed the next morning, probably. I don't remember. Mm, Then my mom came in the next morning. I remember she looking at me at the door and sobbing because she thought I will not survive. And she came to me and she looked at the baby. She didn't pick her up initially, I think, because she was very concerned about me. And then she sat with me. And then the nurse came in the next morning and she helped me breastfeed. And my baby immediately latched on, which is such a beautiful thing. She immediately latched on and started having my breast milk. I was so happy, even with all that pain. Even after going through so much, I was so ready. Okay, now my baby is here. I'm alive. She's alive. She's healthy. Now let me focus on this. Again, little did I know what was coming for me. Maybe after a couple of hours after that, my mom, I think, or I don't know, it was before I don't even, it's been so long and it's so traumatic. So I have these memories which are mixed up now. So somewhere around that time, after maybe I tried to breastfeed or something, they were sitting, they were sponging. I was sitting, they were sponging me or something, and I remember passing out and falling, like I'm like sitting upright and then I just lied down. I just fell with my head behind on the bed. And I I was unconscious, but I could hear that, all the hustle and bustle around me. And then a lot of tests were done and everything. Somewhere I got to know that from my husband that there was a lot of blood loss and the operation took a long time. And they got to know because I don't know exactly how they got to know about this. Someone told them because my husband spoke to the other woman's husband, whose number was next, who was the next person to be operated on. And he told him that there was a lot of blood loss. They were taking buckets and buckets of blood outside the operation theater and they saw them cleaning. Some blood loss might be normal, after giving two births. I know, but I don't know. But which made sense because of my when so I had a normal hemoglobin. They do the test even on the day of the surgery. So I know that there was truth in some truth in what they had seen because my hemoglobin was 11, which is around normal. 12 is normal in the range, I think. And post birth, post this operation, when they checked, it came to 6 in the matter of few hours, which is insane. So yes, there was some blood loss. They never informed us. And then my sister flied to my place and she was super scared. But I still had a lot of motivation because I was looking forward to taking care of my baby. I remember the first time when I had cesarean, I couldn't even get up. The next morning they come and they ask you to get up and you have these huge stitches because your belly is torn. There's a huge incision, so as soon as you get up you almost feel like your belly would fall down, and the pain, the excruciating pain, I still remember. But this time, without anybody's help, so my mama is there, I told her, Mama, can I try sitting? Should I do that? Because I had so much motivation, even in that fragile body and going through all that. I told Mama, I want to sit. Can you help me with the chair? So she brought this, there was this plastic chair near. And without anyone's help, I just maybe held on to my, mama's hand and I sat down. And by this time, it was evening. My baby was sleeping. So I thought, okay, if I can sit and feed. Okay, there was this one important thing that they did to me post surgery. I don't know, there would be a medical reason. I had no clue. That doesn't make sense. They told my husband not to give water to me. Even if I ask, don't give me water. And I was super thirsty. And I had these cold sweats. So again, I told you it was onset of winter. Winter had started almost. This was November, and that's cold. It starts getting cold. And I had these, hot flushes. So my there was a lot of blood loss. I had lost all the water. I was dehydrated. I was super dehydrated. I was anemic and I was super thirsty. But they said no water. Every time I would ask some water, I begged my husband to give me one sip of water. They said no, 8 or 10 hours you cannot give water. Imagine, you know and then my body started reacting weirdly. So every time I would ask for water, they would tell my husband to just, wipe my face with water, wipe my mouth. And I would lick all of those, drops. And then after 5 minutes, I again would beg. I do not understand this. I don't want to understand why doctors or nurses just think about the book. And yes, there might be doctors who are way beyond just the bookish knowledge, but I have found very few like that. It's very scarce. Anyway, so I sat down. I used all my strength and I sat down on the chair. I was really happy. I was looking forward to give, breastfeed my baby in that position. My catheter was attached, and suddenly, then my sister comes in, she meets me, and suddenly then I see the doctor. Okay, this morning the doctor comes and checks everything. This is the first round she took after the surgery. She said, oh my god, you just scared me so much. And you know what I said? I didn't utter a word. I said, yeah, even I was scared. Because that's what happened when you are brought up that way. I had a super abusive father. He's no more. I have forgiven him, or sort of maybe I'm in the journey, but I know somewhere when you are brought up that way, you don't have any confidence even after the traumatic experiences. I was happy that my baby was alive. So I couldn't even say anything even after, I forgot about the rant, I forgot about what she did to me, all the trauma. And I was like, yeah, even I scared. I was scared. And that's when I was breastfeeding my baby for the first time. So I was, on cloud nine. And she said, okay, you're breastfeeding. That's very good. So that's the first time she sees me after the surgery. Okay. Then evening she comes and I see she doesn't come inside. She doesn't talk to me. She doesn't say anything to me. She just tells my husband and my sister something. And my husband comes and tells me they are shifting you to another hospital. I said, why? No, they are scared for you. They are saying you're dehydrated, your tests are not okay, you don't have urine output. Your urine output is not good. Seriously, I had so much blood loss. You are not giving me water. I'm sweating every hour profusely. What do you expect? And I have a catheter. I'm not even sitting on a potty. I just sat upright. I'm not even drinking juice or water or any liquids. You're not giving me any liquids. How will I pee? How? And I was peeing. I had no pain peeing. It was insane. So these were the reasons that they gave. And I was shocked. I was like, no, this is not happening. I said, I want to talk to the doctor. And they somehow convinced my sister, because obviously if you tell the family that we are trying to save, it's very risky. We are trying to save your wife or your daughter or your sister. What do you say? What do you know? And this is just 24 hours post my surgery. Can you imagine? And this happened. I gave a call to the doctor. I said, no, I want to speak. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just sitting. See, I could sit, and then other people came, and then I heard. So again, the anesthetist also came and he checked, and I heard them talking amongst themselves, like, why is ma'am saying the urine output is not okay? This is okay only. See, this much ml is there, and this is, it's still not registering. What is happening? I had no clue. Oh my God, the confusion that they create. My family didn't know what to do. They had to listen to them. Then I called this doctor and I said, please give me one more day. I literally begged. Please don't send me away. Can you imagine? I am wanting to stay. She didn't even let me recover. Whatever she did. Now I know maybe she got scared that I would die. If I died, it would be like, a post operative death, post operation death, whatever it is called in medical term. I don't care. I called. Within minutes, there was an ambulance right outside the hospital. They told me, okay, you have to change. And oh my God, that's another thing. But anyway, I've made up my mind to share everything. So I'm gonna do it. If you're watching up until now, I thank you for doing this. And I can understand how agonizing it could be even to watch this. So if you're doing it, thank you so much. And if you are a man who is watching this, please know these things are real. Men, women, girls, wives, daughters, daughter-in-laws, mothers, they go through these things. So I hope you support them more and you understand their pain a little better. Then, so there was this man outside our room who said he's the one who he looked like a medical professional. He said, I'm from this hospital, which again was one of the most notorious hospitals because it was very famous in our place that everybody who goes to this hospital will come out dying, will come out, in a dead body. That's how it was. It was a super corporate based, money making machine. That's how it was famous. So there's this guy standing outside my door. My sister told him I was just wearing a scrub and I was sitting with my legs apart on a chair. He entered the room without permission. My sister is telling him she has to change. She has to change. So he brought this scrub from his place, from his hospital. He said, "No, no, I can give this." And he kept on looking at me weirdly. He's looking at my feet and looking at my face. I kept my feet together. Imagine what is going through in my head. I told my sister, please tell him to stand outside. Somehow we changed. I don't even remember if anybody could close the door. We changed. And this is just 24 hours after my childbirth, my cesarean. Everything was done in a hurry. They didn't even give me a discharge paper. They didn't even give me things, that they prescribe for the baby's belly button, right? That you are supposed the creams, the ointments, the medicines that you're supposed to put. Because I remember all this it is to be given for the baby's recovery, so that the umbilical cord stays safe and it heals. None of that was given. They somehow just wanted me to go away so that if I'm dying on the ambulance, it is okay. They could at least say that we were shifting and meanwhile this person died. I was yet another case for them. So in a hurry, the wheelchair came and they shifted that pain. Oh my God. And then I said, how will I climb? How are you gonna put me into the I began trembling. And then it was on the top floor. They took me down where the ambulance was standing, and there was no slope or nothing that could actually, that the wheelchair couldn't actually, there was no slope that would help the wheelchair climb onto the vehicle. So they asked me to walk. I walked. And as I'm walking, oh my God, as I'm walking, I remember taking the first step. My sister was holding me from behind. I remember my mother being around and my husband being around, but I only remember my sister holding my hand. And this guy, who had this weird look, who tried to enter the room and weirdo creep, he was standing inside the van. It was a huge van with a bed on it, or there was a stretcher which was on the floor of the vehicle. So he was standing inside. So as I climbed up, my sister was supporting me from behind, and this guy was there. Maybe he held on to my hand, and then slowly he brought his hand behind my back. I thought he's supporting me to sit down and maybe lie down. Slowly, it's very difficult to even say. Slowly, he moved his hand onto my hips and held onto my hips. Can you imagine? So subtle. And I felt that so clearly. And I was in a scrub. It was like a full scrub. I had my catheter on. What just happened? What was that? And it was not by mistake. He slowly moved his hand from my back to my lower back. It was almost like he was gliding his hand and he took it to my one hip and he kept it there for some time. And then I somehow managed to sit. Maybe I looked for my sister. And then they started saying none of my family members could accompany me in the vehicle. I was like, no, that's not happening. I begged to my sister, you have to come to me. I couldn't say this to her, what had just happened. Imagine you are cut open. So much has happened. And again, this happened, which doesn't even make sense. Most of these abuses, these molestations happen in such places where nobody can raise a voice because it will be so tricky. Your mind will not even understand what just happened. And people, they question girls why you didn't bring this out, why you didn't raise a voice. This is why, because it's so tricky to understand. If it happens with you, you would understand what I'm talking about. So I lied down and I remember every speed breaker, every bump that was the longest journey to a hospital ever. The pain that I felt, the road, the curve, the potholes, I died in every step. I died at every step of that journey. And I still remember I was lying down in the stretcher. My sister was right beside me. By then I was trembling and shaking with fear. I was almost numb. You know how they say, what is it, sleep paralysis. It was something of that sort. And this guy was sitting behind my head. If I'm lying down, he was. And I had this fear that what if he would just grope me when my sister is not watching? And I'm in pain, and oh my God. Then we reached the hospital. You know, where did they take me? They took me to the COVID ward. And okay, there was one important thing. My sister, when this whole thing happened, my sister was the only person who kept on telling, no, no, this is not okay. Why are you shifting her? And then how is she going to breastfeed? So the doctor convinced her, no, no, the baby is going to be there. So don't worry, the baby, you can take the baby. I have spoken to somebody, I have somebody known. So your sister, I just hope she doesn't have any urinary problems. I don't want her to need a dialysis all her life, and that's how they scare you. So she made sure my baby will be with me. She will not be taken away from me, even if I have to be admitted in that hospital. So that was the idea. And they took me to COVID ward. COVID ward, nobody knows who I am. Nobody knows what the call was. Nobody knows the doctor which the other gynac had mentioned. And meanwhile, they immediately started doing all the tests on me. They are poking me here, they are poking me there. And one girl comes and pokes me, and then she says, oh, your sugar is high. Do you have diabetes? I'm like, no, I don't have. I never had diabetes. Then she's like, no, no, but you have sugar, you need this. I'm like, who are you? Why are you doing all these tests? No, no, this is protocol. This is happening when my baby is in the parking with my mom, and the parking is away because obviously they had come in another vehicle. My husband and my mom with the baby had come in another vehicle. And my elder one was also there. My Can't imagine what she must have gone through. I don't even remember seeing her. Yeah, I remember like glimpses of seeing her face in that the 24-hour thing. And so they say, no, no, the doctor would come in the morning. So we can't do anything. You have to be shifted. This is the COVID ward. Okay. Then they said, okay, your COVID test has to be done. I said, why do you want? I just gave birth. All the tests are done. Everything. I'm just coming from a hospital. I'm not coming from home. I was not sick. I just gave birth. No, no, it is mandatory. So they did the rapid test on me. And I'm not getting a good feeling. Maybe that was the only time my intuition kicked in. So brain freeze for me now. Oh my God. So they did the rapid test and it came negative. Guess what? I should be happy and they should be happy, right? No, they come and tell me, no, we have to do RT-PCR, which is a blood test. We have to do that because it came negative. Sorry. So I should have wished for a positive result. I should have COVID. Oh my God. I can't tell you how pathetic, how inappropriate, how insensitive these people are. And that's when I decided, no, I'm leaving. I told my sister, I'm going home. And this is just 24 hours after my birth. I said, I do not care. I will meet somebody. I want to go home. And by that time, my daughter, my baby was crying in the car. They almost waited there. It was far away, and my mom was, they were waiting in the car. It was hot inside the car because they had locked the car because it was a secluded place. My my sister walked, so I said, "Okay, bring my baby. Start the paperwork." And I asked my sister, "Please bring her here. Let me at least feed her." So I was sitting in and that same guy was around and he came, he was just covering me. He was acting weird. He was covering the area that he was like putting the curtains on. I don't know what all he was doing, but I will never forget his face. And the best thing is he was a good looking guy. He looked pretty decent. He was a medical professional. He did not look like a creep. Anyway, but yeah, that's also common. They don't have a particular face, right? So my sister got the baby to me. I breastfed her sitting there in that scrub. I just put the curtain. By that time, I cared for nothing. I just wanted to feed the baby. I did that and I told my sister I'm going home. My sister got so scared because she could see the fear in my and I was angry by that time. She told me to relax. She said, "No, please don't just start walking. I'm doing everything." They quickly did the paperwork and then I went back and I sat in my car and again, in a wheelchair and then I walked again in all that pain. I came home. And I thought again, another thing was over. Guess what? There was more. I'm sorry, but yeah, there was so much more. I came and that night went by the neck and okay, by the time we came home, it was morning, it was early morning. So there's a nurse who lives in my neighborhood. I called that lady. So this all happened during the midnight. Remember, we were shifted from the hospital around. So one night around 9, I gave birth. The next night, I'm, pushed out of the hospital. And then everything happens during the midnight and it's early morning when we reach home. So as soon as, it became morning, I called that lady and I asked, could you please help me with something? Could you please come and take this catheter off? I want to pee and it's burning. I want you to take this off. I want to lie down and relax. Because that was the third day. Anyway, if you have ever gone through cesarean, that's what they do if nothing is wrong. They take off the catheter. I had no clue whether it is the right thing or not. I wanted to lie down. I had gone so much, up until that point. I was so weak, but I had so much motivation that I still remember everybody was running around taking care of the baby. They were, my mom was cooking something so that I could, eat or maybe have tea. And I remember going and opening the door for her, and she was so scared looking at me. What are you doing? She said, go to bed. And I went and lied down. I told her, no, can you quickly? I was holding my catheter and she removed it. That was such a big relaxation. But little did I know that she somehow again convinced my family that I was looking pale. So I need help. Then through her, we went to another hospital, which was a bigger nightmare. They put me the same night. I had always fought to be with this baby, so that I thought, okay, now I'm back home and now I recover. I will slowly get into, because I know that I've recovered before from a C-section, and I was looking forward to feeding my baby who was so tiny, who had already gone through so much. But she somehow convinced my family that I was looking pale, I needed help. She immediately called a doctor, which again scared me. She told me that I would need, my creatinine was high. That was another test that they had done, and that's why they got so scared, and that's why they scared my family. But nobody's talking about the amount of stress that goes into all this and what it does to your body. That's my issue with this whole medical bookish knowledge. Nobody talks about stress and how it impacts. Nobody talks about fear and how it can impact even your stress, even your blood work reports. So that was the only thing, hemoglobin being low. No, you can't keep her at home. Don't do this to her. You need, you need your daughter or not. Anyway, she convinced, and then we went. She was trying to help. My mother was also scared, and then my husband convinced. I told, no, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. And they said, no, you should leave the baby here. I said no, I'm taking the baby. But it was COVID. There was more fear about the baby getting COVID now. And I left that baby and I went that same night. I was there in that hospital a couple of days in the ICU, then around a couple of days or more, around 4 or 5 days in total in that hospital. That was a bigger nightmare than all of this. From the treatment that I got in the ICU, they broke my urethra while they put the catheter again in the ICU, which I came to know later on. I kept on telling the nurses, nobody cared. This happened in that ICU. The next day, I had not pooped. I had not passed bowels for 3 days. I told them there's something happening in my belly. I can hear loud noises. I am in a lot of discomfort. I need to poop. I was given in the ICU, and this is a big hospital, you know, doctors own it. I was given a bedpan that had traces of feces. Can you imagine? I am not from the slums. And even if I am, I deserve a clean bedpan. I asked them for newspaper so that I could sit on it. Can you imagine? And I tried, I couldn't poop. And later, then after a couple of days, and all this while, my baby is at my home away from me. I'm not even realize what is it doing to my body. My mom and my sister is struggling to take care of that little girl who doesn't even know where the mommy is. And the third day and the second day in the ICU, I begged the nurses, please take me to the restroom. I want to sit on the potty. There was no restroom near because it's the ICU. I told them, I can walk. I'm not sick. I can hold my catheter. Please help me. So there was one nurse whom I begged. So she said, okay, I'll try. Let me see. So She was also scared that somebody would scold her, her seniors would scold her. But she took me to the washroom, which was a common washroom in the reception area. I didn't care. And that's when I pooped after 3 or 4 days. And it was, I don't think I should share this here. The feeling, okay. But that was a mistake because there was this, I kept on complaining about this pain. I felt like there was things in my belly still, which made sense later on because I was pooping black for 10 days. It was almost like meconium. How did that meconium, which is the baby's potty, get into my belly? Because the baby pooped in the uterus, right? All that I still don't know. Anyway, so I went to the restroom and it took me some time with everything. I was inside the restroom all by myself. The IV drip was attached to me. I was holding on to that beam. I had my catheter in my hand and I was sitting there, but I had to poop. I hope you understand. I came back and I see this face of a person who was there, another doctor, a male, who was there to perform a sonography for me, which I was again scared because they put the gel and they would be pressing, and I have fresh wounds. And he was super irritated that he had to wait because I was pooping. He made everybody feel, he was this busy person and, he had to wait for me. Anyway, I lied down and somehow he did. His face was enough for everything. And then he did. And I kept on saying, it's hurting a lot. He kept on pushing and he said, no, I can't get an image. I understand. I know how sonography. I've given birth twice, all the months, so many sonographies. Can you imagine? No, I can't do the scan if you don't cooperate. I said, I'm trying to cooperate. I'm in a lot of pain. You are pushing onto my incision. You're pushing onto my stitches. And he did that. You know what he said? It wasn't fun. Hindi mein, he said, in Hindi, maza nahi aaya, which he meant sarcastically is he couldn't get a good image. I will never forget that sentence. He didn't have fun. So that was just one thing. Then 2 days again, then they shifted me to a room after so much begging. By that time, my body had swollen. I was double my size, and nobody had an answer why it was happening. They did so many tests, they gave me so many medicines, and many months after that, I realized when I took a calcium test that I had hypervitaminosis. I had toxic levels of vitamin D and because of the all those injections. And by the time I came home after 4 days, my breast milk had dried up. I had bleeding breasts. And then there was this painful journey of trying to feed my baby. I had to start everything from the start. I can't tell you how difficult it was. And within 15 days of me coming back, my baby got dehydrated because I didn't know I didn't have enough milk. And although she was also on formula, I was feeding her, I was trying everything. She went through so much. She was super hydrated. She almost died. All because of these medical professionals whose fault it was. My family who trusted them, me who trusted them. I'm sorry if you call yourselves doctor, you owe an explanation. And this was done to me by a woman. So there's more tiny parts of this, but I don't know how much I can say about this. Post this, for months, I was dealing with PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder. I would wake up every night in the middle of the night and I would imagine I would sweat profusely and I would see myself. I could feel the coldness of the steel bed that they operated me in, and I would feel that pain every night again and again and again and again, which I know I have healed. Right now, my baby is healthy, but I had to share this very difficult story of mine. So, if you resonate with this, do press the like button. And if you feel sharing this story of mine with somebody that has gone through childbirth trauma or abuse or something traumatic like this would help them, do share this video. My intention is not to get attention. My intention is not to create any kind of drama. My sole interest was to bring this outside of me and share this because we need to talk about these things. We don't talk about these things often. Childbirth trauma, nobody talks about it. Although there is, slowly the awareness is coming. But in India, the whole medical system around childbirth is not okay. Informed decisions are not, nobody takes care of that. So thank you so much for watching.